Hello there. My name is Amanda Smith, and welcome to this presentation for Seeds of Diversity on Climate Change and Food Systems in Canada. I apologize for the light quality because this is very rare that I have this much sunlight this time of year in BC, especially since we've been going through weather systems as we have. But I welcome you guys to this presentation, and I'm going to start recording now and sharing my screen. Okay, here we go. Hopefully you guys can see this. This is my welcome screen. So I'm sorry that my little face is up there and it cuts off that word food, but this is again your presentation today. This is going to be a bit of a longer presentation than I think some of your other ones have been. So I have my water, and I also have a pen and paper. And you may want to grab that too, because I have done about 3 dry runs of this, and I'm hitting on an hour. So I'm going to do my best to just get through this in about 45 minutes. But you can kind of tell that this is not a really quick topic to talk about. And I just want to start out by really, before launching into everything, that I want to announce again, my name is Amanda Smith, and I am on the ancestral lands of the Stolo Nation in Abbotsford, British Columbia. And again, this light is very bright, so I apologize for that, but mostly everybody is looking on that screen. So climate change and food systems in Canada. My presentation is a little bit late for Seeds of Diversity today, just because this topic, especially since the year we've had, I spent 4 months preparing for this. And when you go through it, you'd be like, why, that took her 4 months? Yeah, it kind of does actually, because you want to make sure that you're touching on things very accurately, because people have many opinions, and climate change is something that I'm pretty sure people have realized that it is happening now. But I'd rather say that there are weather events that happen for those people who are kind of still not really believing it. But this year has been very diverse, and since now I've said that I live in Abbotsford, everybody's thinking, oh, she's going to give us a whole presentation on BC. No, I'm not, because this is going to be mostly across the country, and I have a theme attached to this presentation. It does not say it in the title, so you're going to have to roll with me. And for those people who are aware or maybe not aware, is that this is a revised presentation from 2021. So I'm really happy to work with Seeds of Diversity. They asked me back for a second year in a row to talk about this topic. I may be smiling and I may make some jokes, and this one is a very heavy topic. I'm really proud of myself that I stopped tearing up a little bit as I went through it, because when you see the devastation on some people's properties and what they've gone through, can be quite heavy. But I'd rather not start off with that sort of negativity. When you go through this presentation with me, and I'm going to try to move on quite quickly, I'm hoping that it'll be more of a positive, I'll give more of a positive light. But here we go, starting. This is not BC, my home screen. And last year I gave a different photo of Mipowa, Manitoba, but this is flooding that happens there every year, and I'm so happy it does, and everybody else is too. This is their regular weather, but it almost makes you feel like you want to go fishing. It's a pretty photo. This one is not a negative photo. There's other negative photos to come, and I reeled back on that one, on all those photos with the negativity, but I had to give you still some. But I like this one, and I hope everybody viewing this is appreciative, because those prairie provinces need the flooding, and I'm pretty sure we know why. Big contributor to our grains in the country for food systems. Okay, so I know that I had said that I have done another presentation last year. You can view that, I think, on YouTube on Seeds of Diversity. I felt last year as overwhelmed as much as I did this year, although I managed my overwhelming feelings a lot better, and I just took extra time doing this presentation. But you can view it now, but these are the highlights of that presentation that I had done last year. So I did review about how climate change is defined. Everybody has different opinions, but I will say that yes, we have a sea level rise. Sea level rising means that our soils and our properties that we're living on and drive on and grow on are getting lower and lower, which is why, oh, this extra flooding. But nevertheless, you can review that presentation, but I did define how that is. It's a whole science that these presentations are not really designed for. It's designed for mitigation and give you an update on how food systems are affected. But I remember I showed a plant hardiness zone map for all of Canada last year, and I did one presentation live, and I had a lot of different opinions in the chat. When I show this, and I'm going to show it again in this presentation because we all need to see, it's like kind of like a baseline. It is just a general like understanding about who has the warmer temperatures, the more mild temperatures. It's not an exact thing, but everybody had an opinion, and I think we still have an opinion. But essentially, those plant hardiness zone maps are designed for tree planting, and there's not for our growing areas. They are guides, and that zone map is always the one winter before. So people may think that is not how it is now, but it will be different. And I know that everybody has opinions, which just makes this presentation very difficult to do. But I want you guys to look at that map and just have some understandings attached to it. And I'm going to walk you through it, but I'm going to show it again. I also gave a few tips with mitigation in unexpected weather. I mentioned anywhere between raised beds, use of mulch, green manures, and water collection systems. I also encourage people to take notes throughout the season and photos. I also feel it very passionately to mention, even last year and even now again, is that we need to invest in seed saving. I'm sure that since COVID happened, and I hate to say COVID, but 2019 and 2020 were very important years for seed saving. We didn't know that back then until COVID did happen. And now we're in the position where seed growers need to take at least anywhere from 2 to 3 years to make sure that your seed is available for sale after you've grown them, packaged them, and now they're at retail level. And prices are going up because of demand. Everybody wanted to grow, so important to seed save and still keep on doing that. And I did go over why this particular presentation has 2 different themes attached to it. You could think of climate change as one theme, and then food systems as another, but they link together. They link together in a massive way because our plant kingdom is very much reliant on our weather systems, especially across the nation, because we are counting on certain provinces and who is ever kind of going in within our food systems and they do food programming, is that if we have bad weather and we have a reduction in berries because of a heat dome, that's going to affect our blueberry crop and then even the prices. So anyway, so I broke that down, and now this is a continuation. So again, make sure that you have a pad and pen, and I'm going to try to keep this as fast as I can. I'm going to talk fast. I have my water. I'm going to try not to go to a whole hour. So if anybody needs to kind of understand who is your speaker today, I did give a bit of a bio to your to Seeds of Diversity, and they have shared it with the rest of your organizers for your CD Saturdays, whether they be virtual or in person. But I wanted to add on that, especially since this is going to be on their YouTube channel, and I wanted to give more information. So currently I'm the Agricultural Program and Stewardship Coordinator for the Langley Environmental Partners Society that is within Langley, BC. And in that particular role, my main job and my work plan is to give support to local residents and farmers on sustainable growing practices through education with schools and other non-governmental agencies, such as my local farmers market and Farmers Institute. But with that being said, due to the weather patterns and the weather impacts on my region, I'm now working with Ministry of Agriculture to do outreach to local landowners that have wells for the new BC mandate for groundwater legislation and registration, and also fecal coliform measurements due to the floods. I also, before all of this work I'm doing now, I have quite a bit of experience in different growing sites, flooding, flood zones, yeah, clay soils, you name it. And in terms of the whole industry, I was a previous vegetable farmer, a junior fruit tree arborist, landscaper, and nursery worker. So, okay, I had mentioned this plant hardiness zone map of Canada. So this is where this gets very controversial. But the reason why I want to show this is it's a general guide. So when we think about, you know, levels of government, we have municipal, we have provincial, and we have federal. So Seeds of Diversity is a national organization. So we're talking more at a higher level. So we would indicate that as to be federal, but we have our own municipalities and our own provincial initiatives that happen. So this is a whole linkage of all levels of government. And, you know, we don't like government. Some of us do, some of us don't. I actually, if people don't really understand that the Ministry of Agriculture in all of our provinces is just under the Ministry of Environment. And I know that is new to a lot of people, but they're the ones with the Ministry of Agriculture who really come up with this map. So going with this map, this is mostly for tree planting, but it gives you a bit of a guide in terms of growing areas for those trees. So when I said previously that people really had some opinions on this, I had to mention in the chat microclimates, and I think people don't always understand microclimates. But I know that this map has changed. This is an updated one, and I actually referred to the federal website, but I also did, I visited another blog, a few other bloggers in my area that talk, you know, about gardening and lifestyle and whatnot, and it was the same map. So everybody is using this map. They're using this map in conjunction with seed catalogs and growing zones and suggestions. So this map is still, you know, an important one to still kind of think about. It gives you a snapshot in terms of what we're talking about right now. And I did dip my toe in different provinces for education and really information gathering, just to figure out how to responsibly talk about weather patterns and climate change in all of Canada. So I'm showing this map because I couldn't touch on every area, but I think some of these points that I'm going to come up on in some future slides are very important. But my next slide is all about microclimates. And that's where people need to know how your own little area on your own property or your balcony or anywhere you're growing, it doesn't have to be if I pick the Ottawa, Toronto area, it doesn't really have to be 5A and 5B. Sometimes it can be a 7. It's rare, and you may want to check the quality of your information when they give you your zones, but knowing that you can kind of change this growing zone map on your own in your own growing area is very important to know. And this is how. So microclimates. So the photo here that we're seeing is an interesting little photo. You're like, oh, it's just a bird feeder and there's a hummingbird on it. Well, we all want to celebrate that. But this is my friend's property, and this photo was taken in December, and you can see that there's some snow around. It's actually quite frosty. It's those poor little trees, those leaves are frozen. Like it was not the best December. But my friend has tons of trees and shrubs, and she has 6 hummingbird feeders out, and I wanted to dedicate this particular slide to her because where her home is dispositioned and it's located, you wouldn't think it would be the best area for a lot of her gardens, but she has created a fantastic diversity and a hummingbird sanctuary that still visits her in the coldest times of year. And she is dedicated 2 times a day for filling all of her hummingbird feeders. But microclimates. So she has one, she's got lots of birds, and this is kind of the example why. But also I want to go back just to some simple terms that we see here on the screen. So hedges. Okay, so we know hedges, they can be cedar hedges or laurel hedges, whatever kind of hedge that's anywhere between 3 to 5 to 8 feet tall. Those can slow down airflow. So when you slow down airflow, you get less cooling effects of wind because it's slowing down to go through this hedge. That can change your microclimate, also homes close together. So anybody who's viewing this in like these very suburban, urban areas, when you start to see your homes close together or big fences, something that is solid. It doesn't have to always be concrete. It can be wood. But when you have something that's very wall-like, where it's not, air can't filter through, it stops, that blocks airflow completely. So then you may think, oh, well, I have it's quite hot back here. But it's not as humid in someone else's yard that your friend you might visit your friend. Think about your area, because that's how all of a sudden people can think, oh, it's a lot warmer here. I don't agree with that. And I have had those comments, but these are some of the things you need to keep in mind. Also, additional shelters to cover or and block rains or snow, that also can change your climate. So knowing that it is more or less winter, it's not your summer before, it's your winter prior. Your summer prior, but it's your winter prior that dictates your growing zone. This is where this also comes into play. So if you, let's say, have a gazebo, or if you have, just a lot of overhang to protect your plants, this is a big deal because it can also change, again, the less cold your plants feel, or the less airflow, or if there is just less sun, it can also affect your growing zone. Trees always do, especially if you have a higher concentration of evergreen. And I know this goes definitely, this is very different by province and by municipality. And that's directed with the planning commissions and the developers and all this. Always your city staffing is to reference a tree planting guide and a recommendation, but trees make the difference as well. Water fountains and bird baths. So I have a water fountain outside of my townhouse structure, and this particular water fountain is going all the time in the summertime. They are saving electricity because obviously, prices are going up, but they have it for a shorter time. So it starts to go on, I think May 1st, and then it is shut down October 1st. But knowing that we had a lot of heat here in Abbotsford this summer, the closer that you went to that fountain, the cooler you would feel because of the water evaporation. So if you have anything like bird baths that are not frozen in the winter, that can help attribute to any kind of additional moisture in your air, which can be more of a either cooler or warming effect. And also when it comes down to plant, mammal, and insect biodiversity, that can contribute to a microclimate as well. So if you have the best sort of situation for, in the plant mix for your property, you might find that, oh, wow, I'm getting a lot of birds, I'm getting a lot of insects, I'm seeing a lot of bees around. That just means that's a happy little microclimate that they're happy to be in. And that usually means your plants grow a little bit healthier. That's probably the word I would say here. So microclimates, you can research that, and every single other garden blogger will talk about microclimates. It's not a new term, but it does, if you understand the basic growing principles about airflow, about water, about trees, shelters, you'll understand that you can actually mimic a better microclimate, which will be heightened growing zone, and you probably already have it. Okay, so that was my review. I'm hoping that I'm not too late here. I'm trying to keep an eye on the time. But okay, so we're starting our 2022 presentation. So I know my head is in the way here, and I can't really change that right now when I'm doing a live presentation, or maybe I can down here. So, okay, this particular message was viral this winter, and some of you may have seen it. Some of you, this may be new to some people, but it is titled, "Dear the Rest of Canada. It appears you have misplaced your snow. Not to worry. We have found it and would love to give it back to you. Our place is not equipped to handle it, so it is making a mess everywhere and getting into everything. Please come and get it as soon as possible. Sincerely, Vancouver Island." Okay, so for those people that have seen this before, you may have noticed that there was a lot of snow in December in the southern area of BC. We also had it in other areas of BC, so it's not completely just in our area. But this was a call out mostly from the prairies, because they have not had at this point any snowpack, and that's what they wanted. So meanwhile, we have all of these residents that are not used to all these hills and valleys with massive snowpack, a snowfall, and all of those municipalities with no funding or budget because of, COVID, to clear all of that. They're struggling, couldn't leave their houses. And meanwhile, we have provinces that are crying for that snow. So it was something that went viral. And I have about 300 people that I'm related to in the province of Manitoba. I know that Saskatchewan felt the same way. They had probably a little bit more snow, but I just wanted to share this with you because this is something that everybody is talking about. And climate change is one of those things where, does it happen? Does it exist? When you have people starting to say this on social media, and I will say that whoever did create this particular thing that went viral, it used to say just nearly Vancouver. They now added island, because if we know our geography, Vancouver Island is a little bit of a ferry ways away from Vancouver, and they're more on the ocean. So that means they have more atmospheric temperatures that change, can create different weather patterns for them. Okay, so we're going to launch into a review of the year. No matter where you are in Canada, you will probably understand some of these things, because I meant to do this as a review of all of Canada in a general way. But I also cross-checked, because I made sure I mentioned something that happened in at least 2 provinces or more. So no one was singled out. My photo here is, it was taken during the heat domes. So this is a raspberry that had a lot of sun scorching. And when it comes to heat, it's not only about humidity and temperature, it is also about sunlight, and that is sun scorching. And we literally had blueberries and currants that literally just dried up on their plants. So heat domes of the summer. There's always wildfires because of dryness. There was flooding in BC and Nova Scotia, and I will say some provinces out east with the typical kind of flooding that you would have, although in BC and Nova Scotia, that was more of a uniqueness. There are always windstorms across the country. Not always the happiest of residents when it's coupled with wildfires, but the whole thing I keep banging on about is that mild December in the prairies, and living in Manitoba for about a 5-year period, every single Halloween on, those poor kids would always be having to wear huge parkas over top of their Halloween costumes to go trick-or-treating. They didn't do that this past year. So that's alarming. And it has been for the last few years where it just hasn't been as cold, but the snowpack was very, very evident that they were missing it in December, and they finally have it, thank gosh. But that's reduced groundwater for these crops, especially for planting times when it would just be the flooding would happen when they would be planted, like planting, or the flooding would just finally dissipate and then they could plant and they didn't have to water. So that actually saves them. Noticeable. There was also mild winter temperatures in some eastern provinces, and up and down temperatures also in those same provinces. So they would still have like the negative temperatures. They just wouldn't last for 5 days. They would all of a sudden go up and down. And that is like a little mini Chinook. We would know about what Chinooks are. That usually happens in Alberta. So that just means that they would have really cold temperatures, and then the next day, whoo, or the next couple hours, the weather would change and they would be peeling off layers and it would be sunny. So it's starting to mimic. I'm not saying it is a Chinook, but it was starting to mimic. And then we also had transportation interrupted due to weather. Okay, so I like to just sort of laugh about this, and people are kind of wondering, wow, she's talking about climate change across the country and she's kind of laughing, and honestly, well, we couldn't cry anymore. So I just wanted to really inform a lot of people, validate their feelings, and hopefully kind of sympathize. But I will say that we learned some new vocabulary this year. I've worked in agriculture and horticulture for 15 years. I never heard of a heat dome. So that was a new one. Fecal coliform. That's a term that people don't really know a whole lot about. Or even know that it is something that is measured. But anybody who is in flooding areas that never used to get flooding, the fecal runoff, so we say fecal was feces, so that is literally the number 2 of animals and humans. There was runoff, especially in those flooding areas that we had, and photos that we had seen from livestock. All of that material goes somewhere, soil goes somewhere, and the contents of that soil goes somewhere. So that's a new term that people learned. Atmospheric river, that's a new one too. We're like, whoa, okay. That of course we all experienced, seeing all the photos from British Columbia, and whether it be within the area that I'm in, or also in the Okanagan areas. Strong, powerful, fast rains over a short period of time, and that would follow a dry periods, like a dry summer where we haven't had a lot of rain. And so when you have that much moisture on bare, hard, dehydrated soil, creates a blockage, and that's how over a short period of time where we get flooding. So new term. Now, number 4 here, I'm still getting clarification on. So this particular presentation was a little bit late because I'm trying to work as up to date as I can, because climate is changing, whether it's like here or if it's in a different province. So I only saw one reference to this term, and I can't remember if it's Rex X or Rex B, but that term, which I'm still waiting on clarifications. So please, when you see this, take note. That's fog that lasts over a week. So when I say that my light quality is not what I had planned on, although it's getting a little bit better because it's later in the day, is this is a miracle, because we just had fog for a very long time, and we're hoping it doesn't come back, although it's supposed to. So what is fog? It's extra moisture in the air. Okay, so here we go to the one headline that I'm sure everybody was sort of thinking that I would touch on. This is the flooding that probably not this photo everybody had seen in the news. It was probably the aerial shot, but this is a better snapshot of the valley. So when we think about the flooding, so highway number 1 is somewhere in there, but that it did drain. It took about 2-3 days. But the thing is this is a valley, and this valley at some point was a lake, and the lake was drained. And when it was drained, it was mostly to create these other agricultural areas, and because of the quality of the soil. So there was some good thought there on food security, but this is not the first time it flooded 30 years ago. But this area that we're in is close to the border, and a lot of this water flows into the Nooksack, which we share with the state of Washington. But in this particular case, the farmland on the other side of the border is a little bit lower in terms of their sea level, and they flood more often. They were the first to flood, and the Nooksack that we share with them came upwards. That's rare because we always know that water flows down, not up. But this is where that was a lot of water in a short period of time. I think I'm going to leave my comments to that outside of the fact where this particular photo represents a potential change in local meat production. And the BC Ministry of Agriculture, which would be more of at our provincial level, just let out to $228 million to local farmers in this area. There's a country that's not enough, but it is some funding to help out. Not all of the animals, by the way, passed away. A lot of them were saved due to a lot of different farmers in Langley who we were able to transport them. But with that being said, I got a lot of calls on that from that past screen, and I did a phone interview from back in the prairies about how I felt and what was really happening at that time. That was on November 17th. But at the same time, I hung up the phone after I did my interview, and I was thinking, well, that's the first time that BC ever got that kind of attention in terms of weather. Like we've had the wildfires, and that's been, but I mean, that was, I don't get calls all the time about if I'm impacted, and I had a flood of calls. But at the same time, I'm like, no, there are other issues that attack other provinces. So I normally, if I'm going to be doing this presentation live, in a short period of time, trying to go quickly, I would actually have in the chat, I want you guys to guess where this is. And you could type in the chat where this is. This is not in British Columbia. And I made sure I did my homework just to see, because the last thing I would want is for one province to get all this news media. We got it because we're not used to it. And we have our own kind of work we need to do to make sure that doesn't happen again. Don't ask me what that work is. That's going to be quite a few years to figure that out. But there are other weather that happens in different areas of our country. So obviously we are recording this, so I can't enable the chat for you guys to guess, but this was in Sydney, Nova Scotia in December. And I do not feel relief at all, but I was like, okay, my thoughts were right. There are other things that happen in different provinces, and I think this is important. So I would want people to guess where this is, but it is in Sydney. They have flooding, as you see, and they also have wind problems. And honestly, Stanley Park may make the news in Vancouver about trees coming down. But let me tell you that no tree came down like this did in Sydney. So you can see that it literally stretched out a power line, and this is a major hazard that can still impact people. And I'm positive to say that it did impact people. But this is important to know. I mean, I don't want everybody thinking that the major news thing happened in BC because we made the news. This one did, but I had to search for this. Now this is a fun one too. So I know that I told you that I had stepped my toes into different provinces throughout the, I would say mostly like November, December. I have a friend who has some family that visited from Mississauga, and they came to BC, and they brought their light clothes, their shell, not their winter coat, and they were here for Christmas and left on New Year's Eve to go back to Mississauga. And they were up here, they were freezing. We had -20. We went to Cypress Mountain because her family hadn't been on a mountain before, so we figured we'd go snowshoeing, and they were freezing. We were there for 30 minutes. And I said, oh, it's 2 degrees in Toronto. And they just were like, mm-hmm. So that made me have a snapshot. So I thought about this a couple of weeks later. So now you see that my date, this is a screenshot of the weather. I used to live in, obviously Manitoba for a couple of years. I've done extensive traveling in the wintertime, and I never saw temperatures like this. It was cold, and they realized that, we didn't plan for it. We thought it would be a lot warmer because we were coming from Canada. So I'm just going to say that the fluctuation in temperature. So obviously this was January 16th. And so we have, this was probably taken on Saturday. That's probably when I was working on this. So -15 during the day, and then we have -20 at night. This is the greater Toronto area. This is not all of Ontario, I'm aware. But you'll see the fluctuation in temperature. So we go from -15 during the day, -5, 2, 3, 2 degrees again. Oh, back down to 10. I'm not saying that this is uncharacteristic for this area, but when I have family friends that just came and it's 2 degrees there and we're -20, I wanted to just take a look. And the fluctuation and the temperature is a little bit more mild. I know this based on years prior. I'm not saying last year, the year before, but the history of weather is all on the internet. And this is where, and also there are weather polling stations, which give you readings. So that's why you may not be in that polling area and you may see this and you don't agree, but this is what was happening, registered from the Greater Toronto Area on January 16th. But the one thing that I want to really point out is when I was doing my research is that all provinces and municipalities are struggling with the same issues. And there's a quote here. And this quote was done by an Abbotsford resident. And this was in November because of the flooding. So all over the world, including here in Canada, the impact of severe weather fueled by climate change are becoming more impossible to ignore. These weather extremes are causing people to have more feelings of stress, anxiety, hopelessness over our ever-changing planet. So this quote was taken and advertised in Global News Vancouver on November 19th. When I was doing my research on the flooding in Sydney and the wind, Global News Nova Scotia shared that same comment in their own story on December 12th. So this is where, dipping my toe into different provinces across Canada was really important because we need to understand that it's not our own area. I've never felt more connected to other communities than I have this past 6 months because of our weather. And I know that sounds kind of crazy. Maybe it's coupled with COVID, but this impacts food. We'll see the prices of food as we kind of go into our next, season. This doesn't necessarily impact a lot of our vegetables. Fruits may look different, but so does our price of animals. So everybody always thinks about how do we mitigate? What do we do? I'm trying to err on the side of hope and to make sure that you guys understand that too. This word mitigation, I'm not a super fan of. I think that that's a word that was sort of meant for the time of this constant climate change panic we're in. I would rather just start talking about sustainability. So we can think, yep, this is going to happen. How do we become sustainable? So sustainability is about just keeping on and keeping going and making sure that we can. So this is not a new concept for a lot of people. And even when you start to see some of my texts, I'm saying, go back to basics, use your tried and true methods, because I have certain dates in my head to which I plant things. So start seeds indoors for tomatoes, eggplants, and peppers on March 15th. Pop them up during that time before I plant them outside in May. Okay, well, the peppers and the eggplants start in June, but I make sure that I have these certain dates and I still go those certain dates. I've done those same dates of seeding and planting outside for 15 years. And it's just go with that confidence. But you need to understand that there needs to be some backup plans. So let's say, okay, I go plant my peppers and I was really silly and confident because, that month of May was super hot and I just went for it. If you go for it, just go for it. And then in June, when you figure, geez, it's really wet, it's cold. Well, you know what to do. You've always known what to do. Take out a tomato cage, slap it around that poor little plant and throw a bag on top of it. It's things like that you guys already do. Continue to do it. So don't let these weather patterns change your confidence level. I think you just need to figure out how to keep that going. And I'm pretty sure that anybody who's grown tomatoes in the prairies are like, yeah, we got to do that anyway. So I think that we need to still think about these things. It's not always what you've done before. You're just adapting what you've done before. Also raise up your garden beds. So I'm in a flooding area. What did I flood? And I probably should have shared a photo, but I had ducks already in the area where it flooded. And I'm like, okay, well, that's where all my garlic is. But the garlic is fine. Water does absorb eventually and flows downward into groundwater. So, but that garlic was okay because I raised up my beds. These are not that standard wood beds, but just keep making sure that you're trying to elevate a little bit more to give you some root absorption for the natural water that's falling. But also it's not root rot, right? Mulch. So we like mulch. This is not new. This is a tried and true method. You need to mulch. Use of mulch, which would be leaves, wood chips, newspaper, wood shavings, mature manure. Those are very important to create some sort of soil base with worms, fantastic organic matter, and just try to avoid bare soils, which I need to get my townhouse complex on that, because boy, oh boy, do they rob that soil. So for water, timer on your drip irrigation. And also I have it's 2 acres and I'm hand watering, and I really like the hand watering at the end of the stalk. And I did have a lot of fantastic success with planting direct from seed. I never do direct from seed, but I had taller kale plants direct from seed than I had from seedling. And that's because the little amount of water during our heat dome ended up going right back into the seed itself, which established that root system even more. So there is something to be said for hand watering at the stalk or right at the seed. The whole use of sprinklers, obviously we know sprinklers, they're great for that whole, this space that you can drop water down very quickly. But at the same time, you have not only one evaporation, but you also have more weed growth. So compost, know what's going into your compost, know what's going into your soil. So, I mean, this goes hand in hand with the heavily mulching. So when you know what's going into your soil and you're composting, that retains moisture. So I had a sunflower patch that I literally just put soil down and then manure, planted my sunflowers, put cardboard all around my little rows of sunflowers, and then covered with wood chips. I only had to water them every 10 days. And also become a water steward. Save water in your house, reuse your gray water, and look into a collection barrel. You can become a water steward very, very easily. And this is the end, the last stage of my presentation. So I'm hoping I'm within that time frame. I hope that the message that you got from my presentation was more or less education and confidence. That's going to get us through this period of climate change. Things are going to happen and we need to go with it. So, I mean, really, in terms of education and confidence, we could think of a lot of different things attached to that. Freeze what you grow. Don't always compost it. Save it, freeze it, can it. Going back to those basics. And I think that's going to help our food security. We're going to have some blips and some problems. That doesn't mean we can't adapt and try our best to navigate around it. I think that we could, if we go back to some sustainable ways and, you know, reducing possibly food waste, we probably could still get there. And that's the major point. And some people may not agree with my opinion, and that's fine. But I think that it's very important that we just go back to our basics and do what we can and get together and share food and enjoy the time that we have with each other. And if that's a reconnection over food, then I'm all for it. So I hope that this presentation reaches you in good spirits and gave you some hope and, you know, a little bit more confidence to act within your arsenal of current knowledge. And if you don't know, ask questions. You can ask them to me, or you can ask them to your garden club, or anybody else that you know that works in the gardening area, even your local garden centers. They are there for a reason, and I encourage you to reach out. And that's if you don't have that confidence, and maybe it can be built, but I hope this presentation did. So I hope that all of you have a fantastic growing season. I'm going to sign off right now, but you can get in touch with me anytime. So I'm going to just stop sharing and I will end our presentation. Have a great growing season. Bye-bye.